Right, my name is Colin Johnston, and I moved to the parish, or my parents moved to the parish when I was just 6 months old in 1952. And so all of my childhood years until I left home in 1970 were spent in the parish, involved in parish activities. The church life and sort of things going on in the church and in the parish were very much our social life. Whatever was going on, we would support it, or if it was something that my parents belonged to, then we would sort of involved in the preparation for the events. And I suppose you might well think, well, how come a child has got such good recollections of what went on in the 50s and 60s? But it was very much sort of the preparation for events. If there was something going on, my mother would volunteer to sort of help set it up or help prepare for it, either because she belonged to the Young Wives group or the Mothers Union. And so that's how I came to be involved in parish events and sort of see what was going on behind the scenes. I mean, obviously, at that age, you wouldn't expect a child to be attending some events. I think far more than nowadays, there was very much the attitude of, well, this isn't for children, children shouldn't be there. But if I could get behind the scenes and see what was going on, I was just desperate to be part of adult life. I wanted to be with the adults. I wanted to see how they lived their life. And I think that's really why I was just so nosy. I wanted to know what was going on. And that's how I sort of got to be involved in sort of parish events at such a young age, and to have the memories now that I still have. Well, I joined the choir at the age of 7, but before that I would have been at Sunday school, junior Sunday school, and then kindergarten Sunday school. So I suppose coming to church with my parents when I was sort of 4 or 5 years old, and Sunday school, and the Sunday school events like the Sunday school outings, the Christmas parties, those are probably my earliest recollections. I have very happy memories of my childhood, and I suppose it's very tempting to think, well, you're looking back through rose-tinted spectacles. But really, they were very contented times, very happy times. And I think the thing I remember most is the sheer number of people involved. I mean, the congregations were huge. People supported events in huge numbers. I think of sort of events in the church hall over the road, the parish hall. The numbers of seats that would be out, the numbers of tables, were for huge numbers, sort of several hundred people would support events, attend events. And I think it's just being part of such a big community group. And I think that's the contrast with today, is just the sheer numbers involved were so much bigger in those days. Well, I'm looking back to my formative years, sort of pre-teen and teenage years until I left home at aged 18. And it's very much the sense of community. And I suppose between the church community and my schools, junior school and senior school, those were what influenced me and probably formed the person I am today. Yeah. Well, and I was involved in so many things. I mean, partly through choice and also what parents made me do. I mean, I have 3 brothers. We all had to go to Sunday school, which is on a Sunday afternoon, every week of the year. We all joined the choir age 7 and stayed till our voices broke. And of course, that was 2 services on a Sunday, matins at 11 and evensong at 6:30. And then there'd be cubs on a Thursday night. And the events that my parents belonged to, particularly my mother, the Young Wives group, the Mothers Union group, PCC, anything that was going on in the church, we were involved in. And for my brothers, it was probably more an obligation. They were told they had to. But for me, as I said, I was just desperate to be part of the adult life, and I'd willingly go and join in or volunteer to help out, just to be part of what was going on. There was so little else going on. I mean, yes, we had television, but there wasn't much else going on. Even if you went into the city, there was a cinema or 2 cinemas, but there wasn't much else. So really, our social life centered around the church, and whatever was going on, I just wanted to be there. Again, I come back to the sheer numbers involved, the size of the congregation or the numbers of people in the parish who would support parish events, which were massive in those days compared to now. And I also think there were probably far more, I mean, again, it comes to numbers, far more people willing to help out, to offer to do things in the parish. I mean, it's always been the case that it's the same core of people who always volunteer and who are always called upon to do things. But I have the impression that in those days there was a bigger core of people that you could call upon or who came forward. Whereas, today it seems to be a comparative few who do all the work. Right? I mean, there wasn't much else happened on a Sunday apart from church and church events. But as I say, as a child, my day was full anyway, with sort of choir in the morning, Sunday school in the afternoon, and choir in the evening. So that really took up most of the day. But I mean, we didn't object because there wasn't much else that could draw us away. I mean, occasionally there might be, a cricket match on a Sunday afternoon, which my brothers were desperate to get to, and would rather do that than go to Sunday school. But no, there wasn't much else to do. But from my point of view, that wasn't a problem. I was just content to join in everything that was happening. I think so. In fact, I would say probably the sense of support within the parish community is probably greater now, because I think perhaps it's due to the smaller numbers involved in the parish life nowadays that the sort of mutual support and the sense of community is probably more important to them. But I mean, that's just my sort of overall sort of impression. I mean, I ought to say that I have less knowledge of the St Barnabas parish over the last sort of 50 years, because I didn't live in my family home since then. Although my mother only died 3 years ago, so she was very much involved in parish life, and sort of second-hand information. I used to hear about it from her. I would come to church with her occasionally, and my father as well. But my sort of knowledge of parish life here in St Barnabas is more second-hand through them. But from my knowledge of other parishes where I've lived, in the last 50 years, my impression is that certainly the sense of support within the parish is more important now than it was in the past. I think it plays a crucial life to the lives of people who were already involved in the church, because they suddenly, 6 months ago, were told they had to stop going to church. That took a vital element out of their lives, and whatever way they've managed to continue worshipping or having some sort of community spirit, I think is not a very adequate substitute for what they used to gain from parish life. And I think whatever any parish is able to do today to try and keep its parishioners together, its community, its church community together, is vital, because it was such an essential element to so many people's lives. Those who did attend church and enjoyed the church community, and all of a sudden that disappeared. That went overnight. So I think its role now, as we try to come out of the lockdown, is still vital. But it's just not the same. It's not as good as it used to be. And especially for those people who don't deal with technology particularly well. But no, just not being able to come together physically in the same building, I think it's a huge loss to so many people. I was involved in a lot of church events sort of personally. As I say, I was a member of the choir as a choir boy, sort of age of 7 to 14, or 13 thereabouts. Also attended the Sunday school from about the same years as well, or a little earlier. I started about 4 or 5 in kindergarten. And then there was sort of a progression that, once your voice broke, you sort of finished with the choir. But you'd then be encouraged to go to confirmation class and become confirmed. And then as soon as you were confirmed, you were encouraged to become an altar server, which I did. So I remained an altar server well into my 20s, even after I'd left home. And as I say, there was also Cubs and Scout groups as well. And then sort of, when I was an adult, even in the men's group as well, which I sort of went along with my father, who was also a member. So I was involved in many sort of parish organisations, and through that, we'd sort of watch sort of regular events that came around every year, like Harvest Festival, Harvest Suppers, the choir boys' sort of annual summer outing and the Christmas parties. sort of other sort of events that took place. Like there was a drama group here in the parish called the St Barnabas Players, who used to put on productions in the parish hall. And all these things, you know, I was there, I went to them, even as a child, you know, I just sort of keen to be part of it. So I can remember all these events and sort of how they were conducted and what went on. Harvest Festival was always great because the church would be absolutely packed with produce, fruit, vegetable, flowers, all across the main altar, all down the aisles, all across the sort of the tops of the lectern, the tabletops, just masses of fruit and vegetables. I don't know what happened to it all. It was the days before it was auctioned off afterwards. I assume it went to some sort of welfare place that could use them, maybe the Salvation Army kitchens or something like that, I don't know. But it was just an overwhelming mass of produce, and there'd also be a giant loaf baked in the shape of a sheaf of corn up on the altar, or sometimes I think even sheaves of corn were on display as well, but there was always a huge loaf baked in the shape of a sheaf of corn, absolutely massive, sort of 2 or 3 feet high. So that was always a big event in parish life. And then Harvest Supper would be the following week. And again, although I was, as a child, you know, I wouldn't attend Harvest Supper, you know, you're too young to go to that sort of thing. But my mother would be involved, I think probably the Young Wives group who sort of organised the Harvest Supper. And the members would be given a table each over in the parish hall, in which they had to provide the tablecloth and the crockery and the cutlery and a flower centrepiece, and also one of the courses, like an apple pie for pudding. And so even though I wasn't actually at the event, I would be there in the afternoon when she was helping to set up, you know, going in after school on my way home to meet her. And not only the Harvest Supper would take place in the evening, and there'd always be some entertainment to follow. And I don't know, I presume the parish groups were asked to provide something on a rota basis, whether it was the drama club or somebody else. I particularly remember the Women's Institute did a 1920s dance to Thoroughly Modern Millie. It must have been when Julie Andrews and Thoroughly Modern Millie, was a recent film possibly, but they all made their own costumes and did a dance routine on the stage to Thoroughly Modern Millie. There was one entertainment which I actually took part in, some other children of my same age, and that would be about, I don't know, 10, 11, something like that. We all were asked to dress up and mime to Freddie and the Dreamers, which was a pop group at the time, and their recent hit had been You Were Made for Me. So we performed that, or we mimed to it, with sort of cardboard cutout guitars, and because it was Freddie and the Dreamers, we all wore pyjamas. So we all mimed to this on the stage, and that was part of the entertainment for one evening. One entertainment I did see, so this must have been in my teenage years, was when the curtains opened and a lot of the men of the parish came on stage dressed in ballet tutus and did Dance of the Sugar Plum Fairies, which obviously, you know, caused huge amount of hilarity. And then one particular chap who was also in the drama group was a very short man called Jack Johnson, who kept a greengrocer's in Stride Road. And he came on sort of halfway through, and I'm not sure if it was welly boots or army boots, but something like that. So he had the ballet tutu, the ballet costume, plus army boots, and it was generally sort of being silly amongst the sort of dancers who were trying to do it properly. And it brought the house down. You know, it was hugely entertaining. There is somebody living in the parish still who was in that group, but I won't say who. You know, obviously my memories are sort of late 50s, early 60s, so it was some time after the Second World War had ended, but I think it was still a spirit of the age. You know, people wanted fun and enjoyment and laughter. I mean, there was every New Year's Eve, the drama group organised a New Year's dance with a live band, and the hall would be decorated on a theme, so, you know, lots of decorations throughout the parish hall, and it would be done all very professionally and to a good standard. And equally, the drama productions, I loved those. I mean, I was allowed to go as a child on my own, sort of late 50s, 60s, and I can remember some of the productions even now. Some were comedies, like The Happiest Days of Your Life, which was, I don't know who the author was, but it was, the story was that a girls' boarding school was evacuated to a boys' boarding school without any notice, and this was sort of the chaos in the staff room. And it was a comedy, and it was great fun. And I think that's where I got my love of the theatre from. I've always loved theatre. They did it to a very professional standard. I mean, the stage would have a very professionally made sort of box set, you know, professionally made, properly made for the room settings. And then when you arrived in the performance, there would be some ushers and usherettes in evening dress, you know, bow ties and long dresses, to show you to your seats. I mean, it was all, you know, sort of a bit over the top, really. But you know, it was just sort of, you know, just having fun, really. But I mean, I was really impressed with some of the plays they put on. I mean, I suppose as a child, I was easily impressed. There was a thriller, one by Emlyn Williams, called Night Must Fall, which was a sort of a murder mystery. And again, I can remember some of the local parishioners who appeared in each production. One of them was my school teacher from Colton Junior School, a chap called Joe Green, and he was in a lot of these productions. There was another play set in a shop where all the shop dummies came alive at night. But of course, during the day, you know, during the scenes that were set in daytime, they had to stand absolutely still and not blink. And I can remember thinking, you know, what a real challenge that was to sort of not to be able to blink throughout a whole scene in a play. I can't remember the title of that. But you know, some great memories of the sort of productions they put on. And as I say, I was allowed to go to these on my own as a child when I was, I don't know, 10, 11, something like that. And it was great. I loved it. I've loved the theatre ever since. My earliest memory is the Reverend Richard Walker. As I say, when I walked in today into the church, it's such an atmospheric building. My mind immediately went back to my days when I was just a young choir boy, sat in the choir stalls. And particularly for evensong on a Sunday night in winter when it was dark outside, the church lighting was very different to how it is now. There were just sort of light bulbs high up on the ceiling of the church that sort of shone down, very sort of dramatic, but quite shadowy and dark. And then during the sermon, Reverend Walker's sermon, the lights would be dimmed and it would just be the light on in the lectern, in the box, sort of overlooking the congregation here. And, you know, we sort of sat in the choir waiting for the sermon to finish, but the church in sort of semi-darkness and just the pulpit illuminated. Memories of that come still back to me, you know, and I can remember Reverend Walker and his wife, Ursula Walker, and even their children. They had a daughter called Ursula who was at boarding school, I think. She was the youngest child, but she was sort of living at home and at boarding school. And it might have been a Brownie concert or something we attended, but she sang a song about "There's a worm at the bottom of the garden." And, you know, that stuck with me forever. I don't know why. I mean, it's totally irrelevant.